Okay, so we did the self checks last time, correct? And now we want to go on a public interface. I might go a little faster because I have a lot of stuff to cover, but stop me if you need something to be cleared. And please do read your course material, and then we go from there. Okay, so we are going to be talking about public interface. So when we talked about the objects, there would be a way for people outside of the object, other programs, other people can access my object. We call them public interface. How do we communicate with outside world? So we have some public interface over here for the bank account. We have deposit money, withdraw money, and get the balance. We talked about accessors and mutators. Which one of these are accessors?
Get balance.
Get balance is accessor, okay. And oops. Which ones are mutators?
Deposit and withdraw.
Okay, so whenever we are modifying our instance variables, those are mutators. Whenever we are just getting the information, those are accessors. So if I am getting the information, do I need any parameters?
Your bank account.
So the accessors was get balance. Do I need any parameters for my get balance?
No.
No. But when I have mutators, I need the parameters for it. So when you say deposit money, the question is how much do you want to deposit? When you say withdraw money, the question is how much do you want to withdraw? So in general, again, this is not the rule. This is what we're going to be talking about. I mean, if you do it differently, the compiler is not going to complain about it. But in general, your mutators need parameters. Your accessors don't need parameters. Which one do we need a return value?
The accessors.
Accessors need the return value. Again, a general rule is your mutators are not going to return anything. They're just going to go and change the instance variable. You might see here and there some needs to return something, but in general, your mutators are not returning anything. So the rule of thumb over here, if you have a method that receives parameter and returns something, you might want to look at that method again. Most likely you have more than one thing is happening in your method. Remember, one class is going to do one task. One method is going to do one task. So your method is going to do only one thing. And if you have multiple things in your method, then you have to create more method. You have to break it down to different methods. So we have our method headers for what we want to do, the deposit, withdraw, and get balance. And we're going to talk about creating this method before you write your programs, at least the headers. So when we are talking about a class in general, the action that the class needs to do is going to be through the methods. So what do we need to do? If I have a bank account, what actions do I need to do with the bank account? Deposit, withdraw, get balance. So we're going to be talking about those things. But before we move forward, we are going to be in our design phase. Remember, in your design phase, you're either going to be working with a paper and pen, or you're going to be working in something like Microsoft Word, Google Doc, some kind of a document. You are not going to be using your IDE. You are not going to be using your compiler, whatever IDE you're using. So when you are designing, you're thinking, you're not coding. The coding is going to be later. Generally, you're going to spend 20 to 30% of your time for coding. 60 to 70% of your time is going to be, the number didn't match, is going to be designing. So we have to be mindful about it. I know some of us coming in from programming, we just want to jump in there and start writing code. But in this class, work with me. Let's try it the correct way. Let's do the experience of that one. So if somebody asks you about the design, you know what it is. If you decide not to do it in other classes, that's your choice. But at least you have somewhere in your resume that you know what it is and you know how to do it. So the focus is going to be on design. Your next peer review, you're going to be looking at two things, the design document and the code. So you're missing a design document, I have to deduct points for you. If you're doing your design document after you're creating the code, I have to deduct points from you. It is not a busy work. It's not that I'm going to write the code and copy and paste it in the design. We want to practice the design. So we're going to be thinking about the methods that we need for the class, and then we're going to leave the implementation for later. This is part of my design. So the next question is, what do I need to get this method work? So if I am saying that I have a deposit, what kind of an instance variable do I need for my deposit? If I have a get balance, what kind of a instance variable do I need for my get balance? So we're going to be coming up with some instance variable that we're going to be keeping track of. So if I create object, the question is, what data do I need to keep track of? Generally, we put those as private. We don't want anybody to access the private data directly. We give them a mechanism of how they're going to access the data, either to get the information or modify it. I let you know how you can come into my house or come into my car. I give you a way of doing it. Either I'm going to come in and open it up for you, or I'm going to give you the car key for you to go and access my car. I will give you a way of accessing the private data. So generally, those are public methods, the way that we're going to be accessing the instance variables. All right, we're going to be talking about constructors. So if you're coming from CS2, you might have some time on this, and I have seen some of you guys are reading the book. I appreciate that, and that's the best way to do it, especially coming in from CS2, to understand these things that were not possibly not in your CS2. So if I am building an object, what do I need to build this object? So that's what's going to happen while I'm building the object. So that's what's called constructors. Constructors are public method that's going to be executed while I am building my object. So that's what's called constructor. It does set the initial data, and it is similar to the method that has two differences. So for those who are coming in from 3A, what are the two differences between the constructor and my regular methods? 3A students, come on.
Same name as a class, and that it doesn't have a return type.
Good.
right?
So they have the same name, and it's always the same name of your class, and they don't have a return type. Very good. Okay, so what about the constructors for bank accounts? What is going to be my constructors for my bank account? Remember what he said. He said it's going to have the name of the same class, and it doesn't have the return value. So constructor for the bank account is going to be called what?
Bank account?
Bank account. It does not have a return value, but can I have parameters?
Yes.
I may have parameters if I want to, or I can leave it blank with no parameters. So if I leave it blank, that means I am not receiving anything while I am building my object. That means that's called default constructor. That means I am going to be setting my instance variable to their default values. If I have parameters, I can have 1, 2, 3. I can have multiple constructors if I need more than one, and that's okay. Then those parameters are going to be setting my instance variable. So let's say that I have 5 instance variables. If I receive one parameter, that one parameter is going to set one instance variable. The rest of them, I'm going to set it to default values. If I have 5 instance variable, I can have a constructor with 5 parameters that's going to set all of them. So I go to the bank and I say, I want to create a new bank account. So the first question they ask me is what? If I want to open a bank account, what is the question they're going to ask me?
If you want to like deposit or withdraw or like any type of action associated.
That's correct. But before they do that, they would say, if I'm going to build, if I'm going to create an account for you, saving, checking, whatever you want to create, are you going to put any money in it right now? So if I say yes, they're going to call the second constructor. That means they're going to create an account for me and they're going to put that money in there. If I say no, they're going to call the first one and they're going to put the balance as 0. So I'm not depositing any money, so it's going to be 0. If they say, do you want to put any money right now? I say, okay, 100. So they would create an account for me and they're going to put 100 in it at the same time. So that's the difference between the default constructor and the constructor with one parameter for the bank account. So if I have a class that's going to have these constructors, how do I create a new object? How do you create a new object in general? Come on, guys. I need more talking. I don't want to keep asking you. In chapter 2, we talked about how to create objects. How do you create objects?
With the new constructor.
So you're going to use the word new to create a new object. You cannot use a class. You have to create an object to be able to use it. Okay? So for this one, we're going to be using the word new. And then we're going to have one with no parameter, or we can have one with one parameter. I guess this person, mom had a lot of money, so she opened an account and it is depositing $5,000 at the same time. Somebody had a rich mom putting $5,000. And poor Harry didn't have any money. So when they created a new bank account for Harry, it was set to 0. And again, we do need to have our class type at the beginning. We will have our variable name. We will have the word new. And then we're going to call the constructor. Constructors have the same name as my class. And then we're going to define if we're going to have a one parameter or no parameter. Okay, so before we do any kind of a coding, we're going to say what kind of methods do we have, and that's going to include what kind of a constructors we're going to have. Are we going to have constructor with no argument, or we're going to have a constructor with some argument? So generally, we want to have a constructor with no argument. If I don't have any constructor, Java is going to build this for you. But when you have a constructor with one parameter or any other parameter, then you have to do this one. And we're going to write the code later. We are not writing any code right now. We're just going to specify that these are the constructors that I want. So in your design, you're going to be writing your headers for your constructors and for your methods.
So this is in the Word document, right? The Word
This is in
document.
the Word document, yes.
Before
This
we
is-
actually even implement it.
Correct, very good. You are not writing any code. You either do it in the Microsoft Word or you're going to do it in the paper. I mean, I would do it in Microsoft Word because I want to copy and paste it into my coding. So we're going to write this. We're going to send it to India or China, and they're going to write the code for us.
Professor, quick
Then
question.
Go ahead.
Is the Javadoc HTML file going to be required for every assignment?
Dot what?
The Javadoc file?
Javadoc file?
Yeah, the one that breaks
I'm going
down
to get to
the-
that in a few minutes.
Okay.
Give me a few minutes. I'm going to get to that. Okay, so right now we're going to say these are the methods that we want to do, the constructors and my regular methods. So before you do anything, we're going to identify the public interface of our classes. Remember, we're going to spend a lot of time on this in chapter 8, 9, and 12. We're going to go more into how we're going to design these things. This is just the first steps, so don't panic. We're going to spend a lot of time on it. Just follow what we're doing right now, especially coming from CS2. We're going to spend a lot more time later on about the design and all those kind of things. So one of the things that's going to happen is the implementation. We are not going to be showing people our implementation. We are not going to show outside world our private data. That is called what?
The black box analogy.
Yeah, and is it called what?
Encapsulation.
Encapsulation, hiding information from others. So remember that when it comes to your interview, they ask you that, you send me a text and you let me know, because you're going to remember that. Okay, so I have a interface, public interface. So what were my public interface for bank account? We had 3 of them. They were what? Wake up. Public interfaces for the bank account. Your mutators and your accessors and your constructors. What did you have?
Deposit, withdraw,
Deposit,
get balance,
get balance,
withdraw.
withdraw. And we had our constructor with no parameter and one parameter. Now they say, you know what? We want to do the transfer money. So the first thing is going to come to my mind when I'm doing the object oriented is, can I use the current methods without creating a new method? So somebody might go in there and say, okay, we need to transfer. Okay, let's create a new method called transfer. So if I want to transfer money from one account to another account, what do I need to do to use my own methods?
Withdraw from one account and deposit to another one.
Good, thank you. So we're going to be withdrawing from one account, and then we're going to deposit to another account. So for the interest, if I want to add interest, I'm going to get the balance. I'm going to figure out my whatever interest I have. In this case is 5%. So I'm going to get the 5 and divide it by 100. I'm going to calculate the interest, and then I'm going to either deposit or deduct it from the account, depending on what kind of an account is it. So as a programmer, I don't need to know the details of what's happening inside the bank account. All I know is somebody has created this bank account somewhere. I'm just going to be using it. I know what kind of a methods it does have it. I'm going to use those methods to communicate with bank account object. I don't need to know the detail of it. Just like if I'm driving my car, I don't need to know the details of my transmission or engine or brake system. All I need is how to use them. And that's what we are going to be doing it with the methods. Okay, let's talk about the Javadoc. So Java, Python have created this tool that was missing in C++ to create this document. So what I said is, I, as a developer, I don't see the detail of your class, but somehow I have to have enough information to see if this is the class that I need to use, or I have to create my own class. So I need some information from your class, and those coming in through some comments. Now, Python IDEs and Java IDEs have this tool called Javadoc generator. So you click on that one, it's going to create an HTML, like a web page type of thing for you. And we can put that one in internal company or external, depending on how you're doing. So anybody wants to use my class, they have enough information about my class. So it's all documented. So how is it done? We're going to start with /***. Remember, /* is the comment. But if it's two of them, okay, let me back up. So when I click on Javadoc generator, it's going to go through the code and it's going to pick up some stuff. It's not going to pick up everything. It's going to pick up some stuff to create that web page. How does it know what to pick up? It's going to be denoted by /***. So as soon as it says /***, it's going to go in there and it's going to start picking up stuff. So first thing in there is going to be the method's purpose. So
Is this what you want in the Word document? Like, is this how you want it structured?
Give me a minute. I'm going to get there. So this is going to be the. So we're going to describe the method. So if I am looking at a method in your class, you're going to tell me what is this method? What is it going to do? Then we're going to have the parameters or the return value. So for the parameter, it's going to be having add param. So it goes in there, it's looking for /***, and then it's going to pick up the description, and then it's going to be looking for add param, and it's going to say this method needs these parameters. So we're going to explain the parameters, name of the parameter, and what is it for. Then I'm going to have a short explanation of the argument. What is this argument for? And then the second part can be the return value. What is the return value? And it's going to be looking at add return. So, and we're going to explain what the add return is supposed to do. And if you don't have any parameters, don't put it in there. Some IDEs might create it for you. So you don't have it, don't put it in there. Don't put something in there with the empty things. Same thing goes with the return. So if I have a type void, then I don't need the add return. The rule of thumb, your mutators don't have any return. The accessors don't have any parameters. And then you're going to end it with a star forward. Okay, so my suggestion, because we all have such an urge to start writing code. My suggestion is to do this in your Word document, and then you can copy and paste it into your IDE later. Because if I am in my IDE, I have such an urge to start writing code. We are not writing the code right now. So put it in your Word, and then you can copy and paste it in your, technically you have it in the Word, you send it to somebody else to write the code for you. That is possibility that you don't write the actual code. Somebody else is going to write the actual code. So we are going to have, in this case, I have the withdraw. So I have my withdraw method that has an amount, and it's going to be void. So I'm going to explain this to somebody from outside. So if I have a withdraw, to withdraw money from the bank account. So it's going to be withdrawing the money. That's my description of this method. Then I have a parameter, it's called amount. So I'm going to put add param amount. Then I explain what is this amount for. This amount is to the amount to withdraw. I'm going to do the same thing again with my other methods. In this case, I describe what is this method is. So the first line is always what the method is going to do. What's the purpose of the method? And then you are going to be doing the add return. What is it going to return? In this case, it's going to return the current balance. Are we okay with this? Any questions on this? So we're going to add param and add return. Those are the things that we're going to do. Again, we are working with the course material of the book that we have. When I see some other stuff, then I have to ask you, how do you know about this stuff? So be sure you have the add param, add return in your design.
So you want this exact like format when
Mhm.
the doc.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, and this is from your book. Okay. So we talked about the methods. Now we have our class, and then we have our packages. So we have 3 levels of comments. In the package level, or the file level, in the class level, and in the method level. So with the class, all I need is just to explain what is this class doing. So if somebody wants to create a new class, they go through the internal web page and they see or search for the description of this class. This seems like something that I can use. So it's a brief comment of explanation. You do not copy and paste your problem statement and put it over there. It is about the class itself and what is this class supposed to do. Again, we are thinking over here. We are not writing code. So my banking class, again, I'm going to have /***. is going to have the description of the class. So we're going to be providing the documentation for every class, for every method, and for every parameter variable. What is left? There's one more thing left. We're going to have a documentation for every class, every method. We're talking about the description. We're going to have every parameter and what else?
Every return.
Every return. So every one of these things has to be discussed. We have to tell what are they doing. So when we click on generate, it's going to create a Javadoc that's going to look like this. So this is like a web page internally most of the time. Sometimes we have it online somewhere else. And then when somebody click on the bank account, it's going to tell you have tabs to do it. So when you create this, it's going to create a directory. Inside of that directory, it's going to have a bunch of HTML files. Those are the web files. I want you to do this one time to generate your Javadoc so you can see how does it look like. You do not have to generate your Javadoc every single time, but you have to have the proper documentation for it. You have to have proper comments for it. So your code is going to have it, your design is going to have it, but you don't have to generate it every single time. It's going to be a huge folder. So it's going to look like this, and I can click on any of these things, and that's going to go to the method itself. And so this is going to be having the descriptions. And when I go to the method, it's going to have my return and parameters in there. So when I click on that one, on the deposit, if I click on it, these are all going to be clickable. It is created by Java generate Javadoc.
So how do we generate a Javadoc in Eclipse?
So in your IDE,
Eclipse.
you're going to be looking for somewhere it's going to say generate Javadoc.
Okay.
It depends to your IDE. So it's going to be one of those tabs, you drop it. If you don't see it, maybe you could look it up.
Okay.
Google somewhere.
All right,
So most of the IDEs have it. Maybe it's hidden. Maybe your IDE doesn't have it. You have to bring it in. But it's going to be just a button somewhere. You click on it, and it's going to create all this. Generally, it's called generate Javadoc. That's the word that they use. So if you don't see it, look it up and put it in the discussion. Most of the IDE, the new IDEs have it. So some of them might have turned it off. Some of them might, you have to turn it on or something. You got to do something about it. But it's just very, very simple. You just click on it, and it's going to generate it for you. So if I clicked on the deposit on this one, it's going to go to the next one. That's going to be the method detail. Remember, we put the add sign. In this case, we had add param. Add param is going to generate these parameters. It's going to explain, it's going to put it in there. That's the add param amount. And it's going to have the description of it. And it's going to have a description of the method. If I had add return, it would say return. So it will create all of these things for you. So again, my suggestion is create it once so you can see it and you would appreciate it, and then you can go from there. Questions?
So for the documentation in the Word doc, you want that for like every single assignment from now on? Because you're trying to build
Every
habit, right?
single assignment from this point on is going to have a design, and it's going to have a code.
Okay,
You should do your design before you do code. There is a how-to in your book, and I'm going to reference it in a few slides over here, that has the steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and the last step generally is writing your code. So you do 4, 5, 6 steps before you start writing your code. We go through those, but every problem you submit from this point on has to have a design document. Some of you guys have done it already. I saw some of you guys already done it, but we generally going to rely on how to sections in your book because they have steps of how to do it. So we're going to rely on those. I'm going to go over those things. Any other questions? So when you're doing the peer review and you see your peer doesn't have a design document, do not write everything is fine. Just write down that you are missing your design document. And please go back and read your peer review. If you want to adjust anything, that's okay. You can adjust it and put it in the comment section. But some of these reviews, a lot of them, are very, very good reviews. At least read it. And this is about the learning process. So somebody's putting a lot of good review for you, go read it. And if you don't want to change anything today, maybe you want to change it in your next assignment. Some of those comments I have seen is very, very good comments. Pay attention to those. Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to be doing our activity. So in your So we have in your module, we're going to have activity. We did the 3.1. We're going to be doing the 3.2. So I am going to do your breakout rooms. So we're going to put you in about, some people are going to have it. So I'm going to put you in a breakout room, go in there, get acquainted with your classmate. Be sure you're going to go to Canvas and join in activity 3.2 and put the same group number that you have in the breakout room in your Canvas. So if in breakout room you are in group 1, room 1 in Canvas under 3.2, go to group 1 and join there with your group. So we can do this activity 3.2. Okay, go to your room. I'm going to adjust the time for this. Hector, why you're not going to your team? Okay, so the last step after we did all this design is going to be the implementation. So this is the time that you're going to start writing the code. Okay, so what is the implementation? We gotta have our instance variables. We gotta have our bodies for the constructors. We gotta have the bodies for the methods. And that's what you're going to be doing. So what kind of a data do I need for my bank account? Again, we will go a lot deeper than this in chapter 8. So don't worry about it too much. But the question is, if I have an object, I'm going to be tracking some data. So your book has a picture of hiking, but then if you want to go hiking or you want to go to a trip, the question that you're going to ask is, what do I need when I get there? Some of us don't ask that question. We go all the way to the mountains and we don't have the things that we need. So the things that we need, the data that we need. So what is it that we need for the bank account object? What does the object need to remember? Each bank account object only needs to store the current balance. That's all we need. And that's what we're going to have as an instance variable. So we go out there. Remember, instance variable, we're going to use the private. So we're going to have a balance. And that's all we're going to have for this portion right now. That's what he's talking about. The constructors. So if I have only one instance variable, I'm going to be playing with those. The default constructor is going to set my balance to 0. My constructor with one parameter is going to get this parameter, and it's going to set my instance variable to this parameter. So in this case, in here, first thing we're going to be looking at is what? We're going to have a new object. What else we're going to do? We have all these steps that's going through these things. So what else is happening here? We're going to call the constructor with the one parameter. It has a parameter, so we're going to call the second one. Then we're going to get this as an initial value. And we're going to put our instance variable to this initial value, which is 1000 here. We're going to return an object reference. When you're creating a new object, the address of that object is going to come back, not the whole object. The object is going to be in the memory. The address of that is going to come back. And we're going to take the address of this new object and we're going to put it in this. So this Harry's checking is going to contain an address. That's going to be pointing to this object in the memory. So if you are in CS, coming from CS2, I need you review this multiple times. You need to be sure you understand every step of what's going on in here. So this is the way it was going through. So he was creating a new object. It would put the balance 1000 in here, and then it would return the reference of this object and put it inside the variable, whatever we have. Next step is to write the code for our methods. So now we're writing the method. Remember, when I'm writing the code, I am not thinking about anything. My focus is on code only. I have done all my thinking. I'm just transferring what I have in my design to the code. During writing code, we are not thinking about anything, just coding. So the focus is writing code, compile it, check the errors. I am not adding any more methods. I am not changing any method. I'm just writing the code for it. Okay, I'm not going to go through these things. So suppose we modify bank account class so that each bank account has an account number. How does this change affect the instance variable? And this one came in with the answer. So we need the instance variable. We talked about this already. Code not succeed in robbing Mon. Okay, so what's the problem with this code?
It's trying to access the private instances directly.
Yes, so it's trying to access a private instance variable that is not acceptable. So we had the rectangular with X and Y, that was the top left corner. We had a width and height. So what do you think the get width method is gonna have as a code? So if I had 4 things, that means what? These are my instance variable, X, Y, width, and height. So if I have a method called get width, what do I have inside of that?
It just return width.
Good, thank you. Return width. So what about the translate? Remember the translate was doing what? It was moving our rectangular to another position. So it was modifying our X and Y. So how do we do that? You're getting 2 values.
We can set X and Y to the new values.
We were adding it to them.
Yeah.
So we would add, so the new X would be X plus whatever comes here. Y would be Y plus this. And then we're going to set our X and Y to the new X. I mean, technically, I don't need to put the local variable. I'm going to talk about the local variable over here, even though it's coming up pretty soon. And I know Brian was asking some questions about this. Okay, let's look at this one. This is a good one for local variable. All right, what do I have for my instance variable in this class, rectangle? What are my instance variable?
Is it new X and new Y?
No, instance variable.
X and Y.
X,
And
Y, width,
and height.
and height. Those are my instance variables.
Oh, so local variables is new X.
So local variable, good. So my local variable is new X, new Y. And we can think about the dx and dy as well. But let's focus on this new X and new Y. So these are local variables. They are created in this method. They will be born here and they will die after the method is going to go away. We do not need cleaning up like C++. Java would clean up stuff afterward. I don't have to worry about it. So if I declare any variable inside my method, those are called local variables. Now, if I created a new local variable called X, that local variable is going to be used inside of this, not my instance variable. If I create a local variable, the same name as my instance variable, is going to use my local variable. So Brian was asking about the shadowing the previous one. So if you have a local variable with the same name as your instance variable, it's going to use the local variable.
You can use this keyword, right?
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a minute. Yeah, you're right. Okay, unit testing, I'm not going to go through it because I need some stuff to be done today. But take a look at that one. Well, let me quickly go over it. So when I create a class, I have to test it. I have to test it to be sure it's working before I give it to my project. So the whole project is going to consist of multiple groups, multiple people. When we were working on airport security, we had 96 people working on that project. And the highest number, we had like 5 or 6 people working together in one location. So it was all over United States, all over the places. So our group was supposed to do certain things. We would do it, we would test it, we would be sure it's okay, then give it to the repository somewhere, and other people would do the same thing. And then at the end, they would put it all together and test it and be sure it's working. So everything that I do, I have to test. You have seen the testing. I'm going to create a main that's going to be testing my class. So when I test my class, I have to create an object of that one. I have to test every method that I have in there to be sure everything is working. So what we have been doing is we were creating a new test. This is not a new program. This is just testing my class. So when I do a main, it's just doing the testing of my class. If I have a project, I might have multiple classes in the same project, but every class has to be tested. So we're going to create a new object or two. So if I have a default constructor and I have a constructor with one parameter, maybe I want to create two objects, one with a default constructor, one with the parameter, to be sure that they are working. So one of them should have a balance of 0. The other one should have a balance of whatever I put in there. We're going to be executing the methods. I am picky on that one. I would execute all the methods. I want to check every single thing that I have. Even though I think that they are working perfectly, I'm going to be testing them. So some of you might see something as a test engineer, that we're going to hire you for this gaming company and you're responsible for testing. I would never, ever do that job. So basically, you're not playing games, you're just trying to figure out what's going wrong. So you got to be particular about what's happening every single time. So that's the testers at the end of the program. So we're going to be doing checking every method. We're going to check all the results, and we're going to be sure that they are doing what they are supposed to do. There is something called BlueJ. I had a couple of students last semester, they tried that and they played with it. So this is an environment that you can test one thing at a time. So you can, in this case, put the stuff in there and it's going to test it for you. I would suggest you, if you have time, to play with it. We generally, what we do is we create a main, we create an object, we put something in there, we draw, and then we check to be sure it's going to be okay. So when you are doing a new project, generally your IDE is going to create a folder for you. I would strongly suggest to look at that folder to know what's going on in there. In the Mac, you might have two different folders, one somewhere else. In PC, generally they are next to each other. Your object file versus your source code. So if I want to do it manually, I want to create a subfolder. I want to put the classes in there, and then I would compile and run them. Okay, so this is going to be your design document. So every chapter, they would have this how-to. If they don't, you're going to pick up the previous one. If we have a new one in the chapter, we're going to use the new one. If it doesn't have it, we're going to go to the previous one. So you're going to be using this how-to for your design document. So you're going to create a document that is going to have a step 1. This is a Word document. So you're going to put a step down. You can write this one down there. This is going to be in your book. So it's find out which method you are asked to supply. That's your step 1. Step 2, specify the public interface. How do we use the public interface? The examples are in your book, so you can follow it. Step 3, document public interface. Document a public interface, that's for your Javadoc comments. So you're going to be specifying your method and constructors. You're going to be writing the comments in there. You're going to figure out your instance variables. So now up to this point, 1 through 4, you are not writing any code. So you have a document to 1 through 4, and then you can copy and paste it into your IDE and finish up your coding. And then you're going to be testing it. Any questions on this? So from this point on, every problem that you do, you have to go through the steps. This time, we're going to be using this how to 3.1. You're going to do 1 through 4 in a document. You're going to do the 5 in your IDE. And of course, you're going to test it and you're going to put some result at the end of it. Any questions on this? Are we clear that everybody is going to be doing it for every problem? Doesn't matter you like it or not. Keep in mind, it's going to be times in your work area that they're going to ask you to do something that you don't like. I'm not talking about, crazy stuff. I'm talking about software stuff. So just because I don't like it doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. That's what they are asking me. That's what they're paying me. I'm going to be doing it. So
Can you give an example by chance in that context?
what context?
Like in the software context, so like you do.
Yeah, I don't like documentation, and they're asking me to do documentation.
Okay.
They were asking us for if a statement has to have a braces, no matter if it's just one or not. They were telling us to not use tab. We were supposed to put 3 spaces for indentation. It had to be exactly 3 spaces. 3 or 5, I don't remember. So we had to do it that way. The naming convention. So if they say that the naming convention is supposed to be using underscore, and I'm used to camel case, that we have to comply with that. So things like that. They will tell you at the beginning of it. Again, they're going to give you 6 months to a year to learn this stuff. They will tell you. What I'm saying is sometimes we don't like it, but you have 2 choices. Either you're going to do it or you're going to find another job to do. One of the jobs that I was working, they were asking us to rotate and answer the customer in middle of the night. So they were waking us up at the middle of the night to go through the code and answer, because our client was the British Airways and what's the other one? Virgin Atlantic. And they were 8 o'clock over there, was midnight over here. I didn't like it. So I find another job and moved on. But that was part of the job. You work over here, they're going to wake you up. Especially the messy code that we had, it would take a while to learn it. And of course, I learned a way to get away from it. So they would call me and say, I learned to say, hey, can this wait till for 8 hours? If they say yes, then I would go back to sleep. If they say no, then I would stay and fix it. So there are things that they are asking you. Of course, if they say, go pick up my laundry, I would just leave the company right there. Nobody's going to ask you to do that. But I mean, around the boundaries that we have. It's just going to be things that I don't like to do it, and then you're going to do it. I didn't like to write comments. I still don't like to write comments, but that's part of the process. So I have got to do it. I got to do it. All right. How much time do we have? Not much. So tracing object, go over this. This is going to be good for debugging purposes. You remember you have a tool in your IDE. You can set your position. You can run your program up to that point and then check all your variables up to that point, and then you can set multiple breakpoints, and then you can run to that point. You can go into the methods. You can go jump over the methods. You can do it that way, or you can just follow it through the code by putting some statements. So something to look at. Please do read it yourself, practice on it. I talked about the local variable. I want to move on to next topic. It's called this reference. Okay, this is going to be confusing, especially if you're coming from the CS2, and that's called this reference. So remember what we talked about the local variables. If you have a local variable name, the same as your instance variable, it will take the local variable. So there is a possibility that you're going to have there was something that I was going to say. Okay, so you will have sometimes that the variable that you have is going to be the same as your instance variable. Now, before we get there, this is what I was going to talk about. If I want to execute deposit, what is it that I need to execute deposit? If I want to execute a method called deposit, what do I need for deposit to work? What do I need?
How much are you depositing?
Okay, so I need to know how much are you deposit. What else do I need?
The current balance.
I don't need to know the current balance for a deposit. I'm just going to add it to the current balance, whatever it is.
Oh,
What else
Which
do I
account?
need for deposit?
Which account
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
depositing?
Which object am I depositing? So my example of early on, if I go to the body shop and I say paint car, they're going to ask me, which car do you want to paint? Which one of these cars is the one that you want to paint? So the object, I have to know which object I'm going to do the deposit. In this case, it's talking about mom's saving. So the deposit is going to go to mom's saving. If it's going to be some other account, it's going to go to those. So I need to know the object, and I need to know how much I'm going to deposit. So I need two things. So the account object and how much money we're going to do. So the account object is called implicit parameter. So we are not going to be referring to it all the time. It is basically given that that's if I'm inside the object, if I'm inside the class, and I'm inside, I'm talking about it, I am not going to refer to that. It is already given. So when I call this deposit method inside my class, I'm going to say what? Balance equal balance plus deposit amount, or whatever it is. So I don't mention the name of the object, even though I'm referring to the object that I'm working on. So the variables that is coming in, or any other things that I need beside my object, is called explicit. That means I have to spell it out, what I'm talking about. So that's what the explicit is. So in this case, I have amount coming in, that would be the explicit, and my object over here, it is the current object that I'm working on, and that would be the balance over here is going to belong to the object of whatever object I'm using. Now, sometimes some people like to have the same name over here. So if I call this balance, so if I call this parameter balance, then I end up with something like balance equal balance plus balance. So which balance belongs to where? Which one we do? Remember we said about the shadowing. So right now, it doesn't use any of the instance variable called balance. It's just going to use a local balance that's coming in as a parameter. So to fix that, one way is to change the name to something else. That's the way I like to do it because it's less typing. Or I can put the word this in front of it. So this is going to refer to my current object. For those who are coming from Barkash's class, you guys use the underscore. That's generally used in Python. We use the underscore. That's a convention in Python for the instance variables.
There's also the arrow, right? When you're using this, you use like the arrow. I think it's C++ or something.
C++, yeah, you're going to be using the arrow. That's a pointer one. So yeah, this confuses me because I teach Java and Python and C++ at the same time. And when I see the students coming from Barkashli, they're putting underscore, I have to ask myself, is this a C++ class? Is it Java? Is it Python? It gets me confused. But anyway, so that's called this reference. That's going to be pointing to its current object. Remember the implicit one, that's a current object that I needed. So if this was mom's saving, this is basically calling to mom's saving. It's going to be confusing for CS2 students. So when I create an object, this object exists in the memory. There is going to be a pointer pointing to it. We are not using the pointer in Java. It's going to be the address of this. It's going to be inside the object, and it's going to be inside this. So they both going to be pointing to the same object in the memory. So now we can do these things. Some developers like to put this word this everywhere. So they are, whenever they see the word this, they know it's an instance variable of the current object. I don't like it because I don't want to type too much. And for me, generally, this name is going to be different than my instance variable. Okay, so we have about, how much time do we have? About 10 minutes?
Yeah, 11:50. I think 11:50.
Yeah, it's about 12 minutes. Okay, so we need to do our learning teams, and we can come back and do this on, let me see how we're going to do this. We can do this individually.
Because Friday you have chapter 4 and 7, right?
No, I'm pushing everything back 1 week. So everything on the schedule is pushed back 1 week because I want to spend some time on this chapter. I didn't want to rush through it.
Okay.
Originally, this was supposed to happen last week. So I'm extending it to have some time, especially for my CS2 students to understand this. So our tentative schedule is pushed back 1 week from now. We're going to catch up with it somewhere. No, on Friday, I'm going to finish up this chapter with the shapes drawing. That's what I'm going to do, and we can start with this one. as a teamwork, and then we can kind of a review. And we're going to go to the shapes, and then we would have enough time. We would have about 1 hour on Friday to work on your homework and labs. Come in, prepared, be ready to talk about them, be ready to fine tune them. So you should be done with them. Ask questions, except the drawing. I'm going to go through the drawing part. You should have some idea with it, but if not, that's okay. I'm going to go over it. So I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to do the themes.